I give you an insight who these fantastic gentlemen are, I would like to give you a bit more info about the topic of today that we're going to be discussing. And that topic is cities. Cities drive almost 3/3 of the global emissions. It is estimated that by 2050, 70% of the world's population is going to live in cities. 90% of all economic activity takes place in cities. But there is also another staggering 90%. And that 90%, as according to the Boston Consulting Group, is that 90% of the people that live in big urban populations now live in conditions that are below the WHO standard. Today we're going to be discussing how mobility, energy, and green urban living can come together in order to make the future better for everybody. So I am joined today by those remarkable experts that will give you a bit more insight into how we can bring the future forward. I am joined by Alexander Sohl, the co-founder and CEO at My Energy, Matthias van Alten, the Vice President of Transport and Mobility at Publicis Sapient, Philipp Henzgen, the Senior Project Manager at DB Smart City, as well as Roberto Colicchio, Head of Business Development at Plenitude and B-Charge. Shall we just kick it off? The first question that I have is how electric mobility can support the energy transition in our society, and what are the main challenges of energy and mobility infrastructure in cities? Alex, let's start with you.
Sure. So I think what we have to grasp is that e-mobility and energy now work together. So we're at a turning point where it's not different sectors, but we have to think those two together. And that is the main challenge also, that now we're using electricity not only to power our homes, but to power our mobility. And this brings a lot of challenges, because so far the infrastructure we have in cities was not laid out for mobility. When we set up, for example, the first power grid here in Berlin about 100 years ago, nobody thought of electric vehicles. Nobody thought that charging a Tesla is the same like powering a 20-story building. So this is why there are huge challenges ahead. However, this intersection of those two sectors will now give a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs, for companies to have new solutions where it will be better for everyone. For example, they can use your vehicle as a storage, as energy storage. They can use new power sources to not only power your homes, but to use the clean electricity that is generated within a city to then charge your vehicles. So this is why I'm pledging here that this challenge ahead gives a lot of opportunities for each and every one of us to make not only a greener city, a more livable city, but a city that is there for everyone.
Roberto, maybe we should go to you next from like the energy perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think electric mobility will help other sectors to grow for the simple reason that as many vehicles are around us, the cost of battery will decrease. And this will help a lot also other sectors to grow, to foster technology advancement, new startups. What Alex said is maybe the main challenge we have in front of us is to take advantage of this distributed energy storage, that it's easy to say in theory, but we are challenging already with regulation and with practice cases of trying to really take advantage of the possibilities that batteries on wheel can have. What is really the driver is the economic part. Of course, the nice things of e-mobility, everybody knows, less pollution, less noise, everything that is, of course, is a nice to have. But what will drive the real change, in my opinion, is the economic growth that e-mobility will bring to our society in general, and in particular for mobility. We already see in our day-to-day job that there are many, I mean, just at our stands already, few startups came to us to offer services that were not existing 3 or 5 years ago. So that's one of the main pillars of energy transition. So the challenges are many. We will speak later about installation, whatever. But I think the opportunities that e-mobility will bring to the society it's much more.
Philipp, Roberto already mentioned some of the possibilities in terms of electric mobility, but from your standpoint on shared mobility, can you give us a bit of an insight? How can shared mobility help with all of that?
Yeah, definitely. So from my standpoint at DB, and especially at the train stations, we have a special situation because we have these hubs where you have a high usage of these points of interest, like a train station. And this is bringing, in the context of shared mobility, a lot of opportunities as well, like car sharing, that we can charge the fleets also during the night or during the day with hypercharging very fast, and do have a lot of usage on it. And from also the train station perspective, we always have the big question, what's in the more rural areas? So we have a lot of commuters coming by car to the cities, causing also traffic jam. And it's one important goal for us to bring these people on the train. And how can we do this? Not by buses that are going once per hour. We need intelligent shuttle services that are pooling, and these can charge in the night with the low voltage, which is also good for the net. And during the day, we want the commuters to come with their own car and also charge on the train stations. So we have a good symbiosis on this. And you see, it's not, the solution will not be completely on a shared mobility, especially in the rural areas. But yeah, we have a lot of opportunities to mix these products and also push EVs by that.
Thank you. Well, Matthias, from your perspective, what are the main challenges for energy/mobility infrastructure in the cities?
The first hand, as Roberto mentioned this already, we have to invest heavily in this infrastructure, and this causes a lot of money which is not available. So we need smart solutions to make that happen, and as we have many cities which are very old, making them in a modern space, having the charging infrastructure aside is quite a challenge. The second thing is, from my perspective, is that we need to have a proper grid capacity and a proper grid management, because we need to balance the supply and the demand on energy, and that makes it very complex. And to ensure this, we have seen this already in the discussion in December when the blackout scenario came up. We need to shut down power, and then we need to have reduced EV mobility. It's already coming up, these topics, and that we need to ensure for our future, to make it available for everybody, so that we don't limit any mobility solutions, but make it really happen and ensure that we have the ability to drive in the future where we need.
Well,
Sorry, I would like to add, because really charging infrastructure is what we do every day, and more than money, because really it's full of money out of there, coming from equity, coming from European funds, coming from national funds. What is missing to really have a widespread network of chargers everywhere is, in my opinion, is culture of administration, especially at local level. We see a big change, a big improvement, but still we need to fight and understand who is managing the lands, the territory that is needed to invest before electric mobility becomes widespread and popular, because of course people need to see chargers, even if they are not used. I mean, we have more experience in Italy than in other countries, but sometimes it's really the culture of the administration that they need to take brave decisions in some ways, because most of the times people complain that they lose parking slots or they lose whatever, and sometimes you need to take some cultural engagement. We have seen a big improvement compared to last year, so now I'm very optimistic, but what we miss is maybe that part that is, of course, the most difficult part. Yes, of course, grid is the more technical, critical point, but luckily TSO are aware of that, so they are trying to solve it.
Maybe I can also add one or two experiences there. I guess those two topics are intertwined. Yeah. Usually, grid and all energy-related stuff is really close to national politics. And that is why the security over the power grid is something you would not give out of hand and you would not gamble with if you want to install charging stations. And that's why we sort of need innovative new solutions. And that's, for example, what we do is that we take charging outside the grid. So we can give a lot of more velocity, a lot more speed into the ramping up of e-mobility. And I think it's those kind of solutions that we need, especially in the beginning, to fast charge the transition, first of all. So people see the charging stations. People can install charging stations independent of where they are and where they need it. So we can have a small push, and then legislation can follow. And if we have a demand already, then it's easier to get the business cases running. Because capital is there, we just make the business case, and also the legislation that we can actually invest the money into the market.
Adding to that, even small solutions like Renault just published in March with Plug-in, which is an individual service to offer private wallbox owners the entire grid for others, and they get money for that. This is a smart solution, could be implemented very easily in parallel to have the conversations to build the infrastructure.
I think it was already very briefly mentioned. I don't know if any of you that are present here attended the previous talk, but the topic of administration has been quite a big topic. It was also mentioned in the previous talk. So coming from that, and also coming from the question of energy usage, power grid, and so on, what are the possible consequences for everyone to focus the energy mix mainly on electrification? I think I would like to start with you, Alex. You already mentioned that what you guys do is charging off of grid. So if you would like to elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, so I mean, imagine a future 5-10 years from now where we have 100% renewables in the grid. There will be a high volatility of supply. Also, demand will be fairly stable, and we can estimate that, but supply will be really volatile. So in the future, we will not pay for the electricity, but rather for having the electricity at a certain moment of time. And so either we can use large storages, battery-based, we can use vehicles as storages, but also there is a willingness to pay for energy generation at a certain point of time. And this is what we enable. So we have the world's first grid-independent charging infrastructure that is capable of fast charging any vehicle independent of the location, time of the day, or period of the year. And so with that, we provide the security that any company operating a fleet or any government or a public charging infrastructure will deliver you the fast charging power when you are there, when you have 0% in your battery left and you need to go forward. So this is a small puzzle piece, I think, for the energy transition, for the mobility transition, that we can now place charging infrastructure, especially in the places where we need them now. Because we're not limited by the grid, we're not limited by legislation, because what we do is permission-free. So you can just take the container and place it wherever you want, and then you can fast charge your vehicles.
Roberto, I think coming to you, you already started briefly on the topic of the opportunities and what changing the energy mix will mean for other sectors as well. Would you like to elaborate a bit on that?
I think one topic that is not well analyzed is the customer experience. What does customer experience means is to give the freedom to an electric vehicle owner to also takes money out of his car. That's a revolution. It's still in the theory of electric mobility because currently nobody is really getting money out of it, if not some really nerd guys that try to do it on his own by charging at a different timing at home with a flexible pricing. But if you look ahead, I think this opportunity will be linked to telecom industry, to entertainment industry, to a lot of places with which we cooperate, because we are not, we try to say that we are not engineers. I mean, my company is full of engineers, both IT and technical, but we are a marketing company in the sense that after the chargers is there, it's a precondition, of course. What will start is a cooperation with whoever is around the charger. First of all, who is hosting us, but secondly, who wants to give a better customer experience also in his sector. So I think this is the main opportunity looking forward of our sector that will be interlinked to other sectors. To reach that point, we have many technical challenges and administration challenges that are lowering down just because there is more demand, there is more consciousness in the various stakeholders that are many, not just the operators. I mean, it's strange because when we are at these conferences, everybody agrees. Typically, it's very difficult that there is a challenge between people saying also on the vision. Theory is something, the reality unfortunately is another one, so there is a need of a bigger effort of everybody to, typically I'm sitting, not in this case, but typically I sit with competitors at conferences, and we do say all the same things, and in some cases we are also organizing association, etc., but the voice should be more unified also from other sectors. It's difficult to bring other sectors on board in bringing e-mobility, but this maybe could be a game changer, probably.
Matthias, a bit more about the possible consequences from your side?
I would like to add something to Roberto regarding customer experience, because I totally agree. This must be very seamless to have mobility in the future, and we are not at that point in this stage. So this is only one aspect. The other one is really to make it affordable for everybody, that everybody can have the opportunity to drive from A to B when he wants to drive from A to B, or use multimodal mobility solutions. And that must be very easy and seamless to connect the dots here. And therefore, we need to partner and not having these silos, OEMs, government, suppliers, new startups coming up. It's the only solution how that could work out in the future.
Philipp, a bit more on the shared mobility. You already mentioned that you guys are looking into the possibilities of charging fleets during the off-peak times, stuff like this. Could you elaborate a bit more on that, like what Deutsche Bahn is doing in order to contribute positively to this whole conversation?
Yes. So first of all, I think we should differentiate between micro-mobility and car mobility. So in the micro-mobility, we see vehicles like e-scooters, bicycles, mopeds, and I see a huge opportunity for points of interest like train stations to build up these battery swap stations, because they need a low voltage to charge. And you could even combine them possibly, in my opinion, also with solar panels to support that. So here we have a great opportunity if we bring this on hubs, which we are already doing, to bring this also for the end customers together. And then secondly, we have the car mobility, where we have car sharing, we have shuttles, which we are also having in use. And here we need to bring the right infrastructure, and that means also to not force the blackout, only hypercharging when it's needed. And to be honest, from DB perspective, we want a very small part of the people to do fast charging. These are the people who are coming to big train stations and maybe doing a little of shopping. That's fine, and then they are gone. But our main case is that we want the people to come, leave their car and charge it for a long time. And this is better for the net, but of course it has an impact on a negative impact on the economics. So it's you cannot earn as much as with hypercharging, obviously. But we also have a lot of interesting use cases at train stations for hypercharging, like free float car sharing. So we want one to come, then the car can be charged in 15 to 30 minutes, and the next user can take it to do the last mile. And we have it for taxis, for shuttles. They could possibly also charge in the night. And especially in the rural area, I think it's a big opportunity. And we understood that we need to also get the commuters. So it's not only the shared mobility, but also we have to accept that, of course, in the rural area, people will have their own car, but we give them new opportunities to come and also to bring the right infrastructure to incentivize.
I think it's also quite interesting that you mentioned micromobility, because that's a topic that has been constantly going on in the news. It happens that cities that before embraced micromobility are now shunning away from micromobility. So I guess that gives us a nice leeway into the next question of what will drive more energy transition / electrification of mobility. Will it be the customers? Will it be policies? And I think, Matthias, it would be the best to start with you in that situation.
Very kind. So from my perspective, it's both. It's the customer and policy. So the customer, the customer is really convinced EV mobility or renewable energies for my home is the success, and I'm interested in. If we have a bigger customer group, then we have a bigger voice of wallet at the end and reaching out, and that creates demand on the other side, creates ideas, driving innovation and technology advantages. And policies on the other side can support this with valuable incentives, funding of R&D activities, building partnerships, even not in one country, but even across countries. So because I think it's super important that we have a standardization. And Philipp, you mentioned battery swapping. For battery swapping, we need one battery type, and that is a big challenge. I remember when I was in charge for the BMW i3, it took 2 years to identify the standard connector for the charging cables within the EU to get a standard. And therefore, we need to speed up.
I think coming back to Roberto and to Alex, you also mentioned before the seamless customer experience. So would you like to elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, I will also come back to policy and customers. Of course, they are both important. In my opinion, policies are important today to set up the framework for tomorrow. And I don't care about the policy in terms of funding. I mean the policy in terms of, again, I repeat the point on the widespread of culture. When there is a big policy coming, national level, European level, these words arrive also to the general public that maybe is not interested in e-mobility or is not thinking about. So policy could help, it's weird, but on the communication, on the putting everything on board on the direction of e-mobility. Of course, it's important to set standards. We work cross-country, and it's just crazy because there is no standard, if not maybe for the plugs, but maybe something is changing again. But of course, the standardization of authorization procedures, a lot of things. Of course, in Europe, it's a long way because even if there is a directive, it's always at the end at local level, so not at national level. It is interpreted as the local administrator does. I can stay here hours to let you laugh about what we have found in the reality, but I'm not talking about this now. So having said that the policy is important to set the standards and to increase the communication. For me, what will drive is the customer, and I agree with Matthias, customer experience is still bad. And we know we are one of the responsible of the bad customer experience in the sense that charging a car is a nicer experience than 5 years ago, but it's still far away of what we have in mind, and we are trying to work to that direction. But when customers will be on board of the direction, this will accelerate very much. So policies is a precondition, but in the long term, in my opinion, customer, it's more important, it's more vital.
Alex, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think legislation and customer experience also go hand in hand. Because, I mean, we see it with the one standard plug in the EU, that is an important step. But then, as Roberto said, on the local level, there are so many different standards. Nationally, in Germany, we now have EC and credit card payment. We have different measurement devices for electricity than the rest of the EU. So this is really something that is a challenge to a lot of, let's say, industry players to guarantee that seamless integration into a European level. And this is why I emphasize that we have to regulate this on a European level. So we can, as a company, as a player in the market, we can guarantee that seamless integration into an infrastructure. If we have local governments, if we have national governments going on their own, then it's really hard to get that integration into the ecosystem. Because after all, I mean, all of us here probably use more than one app to go from A to B. And we want to have this multimodal mobility, and we want to have it seamlessly integrated into our daily use. So this starts with the hardware, this starts with setting the standards, and then we can create the customer experience on top. But right now, we're not even at a level where the hardware is the same. We're not in the level where we can have the same interfaces to integrate them into the ecosystem. So this is something where legislation is called for, where we need legislation to set the standard, and then we can have a level playing field for all in the market.
I think coming from that, if any one of you would like to give us a bit more of an insight of how can electric and shared mobility be affordable to anyone? You mentioned the customer experience, you mentioned the legislation. How do we do it in a way that it doesn't widen the social gaps? Like, how can we do it in a way that everybody has access to it and that it's a seamless experience for everybody? Maybe starting with Philipp from the shared mobility side, more than the electric side, to which we will come back in a moment.
Right, yeah. So in my opinion, it's already a great vehicle to have affordable mobility, because if you look at single prices of single electric services, like maybe free float car sharing or even car rental, you might say, wow, that's expensive. I take my own car. But the solution is to combine it and combine it contextually. That means for each context in your daily life, and I can tell that as living in Berlin and just doing it for years, you have a different need. So for instance, you have a nice weather outside, you have time, you take a bike sharing, yeah? So you pay 50 to 70 euro per year, you have a flat rate. It's extremely cheap, but maybe you only have 30 minutes to come here. Being on stage, you don't want to sweat, you take a shuttle. And then, yeah, this time it's a bit more expensive. But if you sum up these different use cases, also taking maybe a car sharing with luggage to the train station and then hopping in the train. So you have many different use cases. By the end, I promise you, you will be satisfied with all your needs and it will be super cheap. That's what I experience. But we have some barriers. It's very unordered yet, so we have lots of different services, but I can see an accumulation in the services. So the big ones are buying the smaller ones. You have more and more services in one app. And this is really exciting because I think that's what it's neat, that the people have a single point where they can book the different options, included also public transport. Also public transport can be very attractive when there's rush hour and there's traffic jam and maybe the train is empty. So you need this and it's easy as that.
Matthias, what can we do in order to not widen this social gap, but still advance the electrification of our transportation system?
At the moment, we have the situation that nobody's really earning money with car sharing. So that's the reason why a lot of brands like Cadillac, with Book by Cadillac, and others have stopped their activities. Even PSA in Berlin, the case, they stopped it because it's not affordable, it's too expensive. You need at least a utilization of a car above 65–70%. And that is a lot. And that's what, for instance, Sixt did very well in their application, where you have last mile commute with scooters, you have public transportation, rental, leasing, abo subscription services, and everything into one. And they are combining the different spaces. And that is the solution how they can increase the utilization. And that is a smart solution. That's what we need to achieve. And then we get the prices down. That's the only way. Just having single solutions, every brand or company is doing their own subscription service will not be a success from my perspective. Only if we have this as a community, that will help.
So we basically need like a consolidation of all of the solutions into one in order to bring it forward.
Yeah, including multimodal integration of public transportation, long train distance, etc. Yeah.
Alex, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, also the same is true for charging. Nobody earns money currently with charging. So the question is then, who is investing? And what is sort of the role of private companies versus governments and societies? So this is also a question you can ask. Is it the role of local governments, communities to provide charging infrastructure? Is that necessary, or is that something that is pushed to private companies, which will then obviously earn money with it or have to earn money with it. So the question really here lies with what we perceive as something we as society, how we want to move. Is e-mobility the way? Then we should also invest publicly into at least the startup phase of those infrastructure. If you provide a certain level that is usable for anyone affordably, then yes, this could be also a way.
Roberto?
From my perspective, the real gap is on the customer. So we need to help the customers to buy, to use today what is electric, because of what we have all said today. It's a matter of time. So like any sector, economies of scale will bring down prices. But if we want to close the gap, here it comes the policy, in my opinion, rather than putting money on the infrastructure that risks to have a quality of service that is not the goal, but the goal is getting the money. And we have seen bad examples in other sectors. It could help in some ways if there are gaps. So for example, I really appreciate the European funds that goes cross countries, try to give a standards and invest where there is a gap. So 5 years ago, there was a gap on the highways, so they financed highways. Now highways is more or less not covered, but there is interest of the market, so everybody's trying to. Now there is a gap, for example, in trucks, so they're financing trucks. So that policy, I agree with those policies. I don't agree on policies of widespread money, because then the focus is getting the money, not the quality of service on the long term. If there are money, it's a good thing. Give to the customer in a social way. So I agree when they put the limit on luxury cars, the value of the incentives is meaningless. But if you go on the general market cars, maybe that 4,000 euro, 5,000 euro value a lot for who is buying, who is renting, who is and I'm open to give also to car sharing the incentives, not just to final customers. For example, in Italy, both in other countries, there was a big debate. Okay, who should give these incentives? Oh, just the poor people. Yeah, that's good in theory, but who is investing today? Big car sharing company. Give money also to them, even if they are part of BMW, big groups that have money, but they cannot invest in loss in a segment, but just because they are not the state. So that's what I think, and also as a company.
I would like to add something here, because I think the car producers need to rethink what kind of vehicle is needed in car sharing, because the vehicles now in the portfolios are, from my perspective, too expensive. And we need different types and need to think about how long will be the usage of these car sharing cars, because it's always a big question after 1 or 2 years having the car in the usage phase, what will happen afterwards? Is anybody buying a car sharing car as a used car in the future? It's a big question, and perhaps it's the way to think about, to have like a skateboard approach, where you have the live drive train and the battery, and you have an easy recycling hut on it, and make it easy and have it always updated, upgraded in a much cheaper way. And that might reduce the cost as well.
I would also add something to this. I totally agree. We might have the wrong car sizes, because if you look in the cities, I think like 90% of the trips are alone or in two, but most of the trips of this 90% are alone. So just have a look in the cars. You know, there are 4 free seats in big cars usually, and therefore also bike sharing, scooter, moped is a great alternative. But I'm really looking forward to have this next step in the car, also car sharing, that we have these micro cars where you might also transport some luggage or something. Also from a train perspective, where space is very rare, you have to, a lot of usage of the space. You could possibly put like 2 or maybe 3 of these micro cars next to each other, and would save a lot of space. That would be very nice. And also, of course, the energy consumption would be much lower than going with a 6-chair Audi Q3 to the next train station. So this would be a good development.
I guess that time is slowly ticking, and we are getting closer and closer to the end of the panel. So if any of you would like to start with like giving your projection for the next 3 to 5 years, like what is the future of the whole sector? Where are we going? Maybe Alex?
So I think we're heading in the right direction, but not fast enough. I guess this is something we have everything in place, everything we need to really transition to the next level of electrification of traffic and mobility, and also intertwining to those two sectors. There are some innovative solutions like ours, there are traditional solutions, and everybody needs to work together. The question is now, how can we speed up the process? And this is, for me, is making a business case. This is really something where we have to attract the private money to flow into those areas. This is where innovative business model come into play. We need established large players, we need small companies piloting in these areas, and then, for example, making infrastructure less asset heavy. For example, making as a service more, making it sharing. And this is something, I guess, that will fast track the transition. And this is why, or also what we are trying is to offering the service instead of the buying the investment. And I guess this is something where we'll see a lot more. We see the trend in a lot of different industries, but also in the energy sector where we traditionally have an asset-heavy business. We have to go more into local, micro sharing services. And that's also, I guess, where we can play a good role in.
Roberto?
Yeah, I think in 3 to 5 years there will be no e-mobility, but just mobility. We will not be the need of the E before it. And that will be a really different way of thinking the mobility. The challenges we already spoke are authorization procedures, culture. I hope to see, but I think there will be a bigger interconnection between energy and mobility sector, because today it's again only in theory, but I see that real business case and will bring money on it. So interest for investment from private company, existing company, new company. So the real game changer will be the definitive interconnection between energy and mobility. And we will just speak about mobility. Of course, there will be electric cars will be still a small portion of the cars in circulation, but all the innovation will come from that part of the chain.
Philipp, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, so in 3 to 5 years, I see 2 developments. One is the game changer everyone is talking for years about. It's autonomous and shared mobility. Of course, it will help 2 problems that at the moment the vehicles, they're often too far away, so they come to you. And secondly, it's sometimes the wrong size, so it can be better anticipated if it comes to you, also by the data collection and prediction. And the second one, which I see currently, you all see the development with ChatGPT and AI. I'm really curious on the development of voice assistants. So I hope that the voice assistant is offering me the different mobility options and also having my meetings in the backlog and offering me, so it's a nice weather, how do you want to go? And this is going to be probably very exciting.
Matthias, 3 to 5 years, where are we heading?
Yeah, we're coming from the situation that the automotive industry is developing cars, producing cars, selling cars to customers, even for cash or leasing, having after-sales services with workshops, changing oil, changing tires, and financial services. This model will change, and we are already right in the transition. And it will go towards more mobility as a service, as we already discussed here in the panel as well. And we need to think of what will be the implication on mobility as a service for the entire industry in the future. And this is something we need to think about already right now, within the next 3 to 5 years, even if autonomous driving will be in place 2035 and beyond. But we need to start to think about it, because we have the responsibility for all the people working in this industry as well. And that is very important to make it even attractive to work in the industry, but even give enough space for everybody to earn money, to have a nice and interesting proper job, and not just doing automation and easy development things in the future, from my perspective. But that's something very important from my perspective.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the audience if there are any questions for our panelists right now. Because if not, don't worry, they will still be here at the festival going around. You can always catch them. If there are no questions, thank you very much for attending our panel today. As far as I'm aware, there will be a networking session going on very briefly before we rejoin on stage for more panels. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you once again to our fantastic panelists.
Thank you.
If you would like to give a bit of a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.